Caddis Maximus here, this time with a quick review of the Harbor Freight Icon 10-piece. This happens to be the 10-piece metric crow's foot, open-end crow's foot set. They also have an 11-piece fractional set. And I actually picked these up kind of out of frustration. They still are having that 20% off coupon, so it's 40 bucks. I did see that they had some Icon Flex ratcheting wrenches, which are outrageously priced. Really. They want 170 for the 12-piece metric. That's 50 bucks away from just straight up buying some Blackhawks off the Proto website. Come on now, you can't do that. We'll get to these in a second. Well, first I'll talk about the old Craftsman USA ones. I actually was using a 14 millimeter and trying to bust a nut that was, or excuse me, it wasn't a 14, it was the 17. And I was trying to break a fastener. The idea with these types of sockets is the fact that you may have a situation where you need to use an open-end wrench, but you just don't have straight access, or you're way off to the side, just not getting a very good purchase or grip on that bolt. And so you have these types of sockets, which are a wrench on a socket. Commonly is 3/8, although from the more professional or larger tool manufacturers, Snap-on, etc., there are 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch versions of these, etc. Anyway, in my case with the Craftsman, I was trying to get it at a bolt, and I just needed a wrench that had an angle like that, and ended up splitting the buckle and trying to get that warranted. Lowe's gave me some jive because it was different part numbers or something, and I would have had to call customer service, which I did, and it was just like a nightmare. So I was like, well, I'm not going to get some Craftsmans if I can't even get a warranty. You have to pay for shipping to mail it in or something. It's like terrible now. So I went by Harbor Freight and picked up these Icons, and they really do seem like they're pretty decently made. Let me get the 19 millimeter. Don't like the laser etching at all. They're saving money on these by not putting mechanical roll stamps on these, and the laser etching just gets crudted up, gets worn, and then you can't even see what size they are, and that's like a real kind of a big issue. You really want wrenches to have some type of mechanical stamping and sockets, because then they do become hard to read and you're always grabbing the wrong size. But with the coupon, they're only 40 bucks. I really like that they have large, pretty deep undercuts for the detent on the wrench, so it does stay on pretty good. One other thing I was going to mention is, even compared to these old Craftsman USA ones, is that they are just a little bit beefier. Actually, I should do it this way. If we line up the open ends, we can see that the jaws are just a little bit wider, just a touch longer. If we look at the buckle there, it's just a little bit thicker on the Icon, so they hopefully should hold up a little better, and at least Harbor Freight's going to be around for longer than Sears, or even with the current Craftsman stuff, decided to go for them. And I think they're okay. They have, of course, the usual oversized tray, so I recommend putting them on a socket strip. Although one thing I will mention about these Icons is I was measuring them such as this 19 millimeter, and if I do a pretty careful job, when I really want to measure the size, I get it parallel and I kind of sweep the calipers through, and it seems to be reasonably sized. It's just, if I really get a pretty good angle here, they're over by about 0.2 of a millimeter, so I would have liked them to be a little bit tighter, but they're on par with what the Craftsman is. So anyway, I should also mention, let me get the equivalent size here, that the other thing about crow's foot wrenches is they tend to have very narrow teeth to get into tighter spaces, and they do tend to be more narrow than what would be their associated just regular combination wrench thickness. I will say something seems different about these. You can certainly see the chrome, because the chrome has a little bit more of a darker, just slightly grayer, deeper chrome compared to this Icon wrench. And there has been some comments about the softness, particularly of Icon open-end wrenches and the sockets, especially the ratcheting ones. And I've used this once to remove some bicycle pedals here, and we can see just a little bit of rolling there, but it's actually quite a bit of rolling along the edge there. It just was really surprising. And the reason I was surprised, even though it's a little bit of rolling, is this old Husky I've had for 20 years, and I probably removed 50 sets of bicycle pedals. I've stood on this repeatedly. It's also much narrower jaws, but it's just obvious that this old Husky does have a harder steel than this particular Icon wrench. So I did want to throw that in there. These sockets, I'm hoping a different type grade of chrome indicates that these are going to actually hold up at least a little better than some of these wrenches. Getting 2 crow's feet, of course, that is their advantage, is just being able to get an open end wrench in all sorts of places, being able to use a breaker bar like this so that you can use an open end wrench at a different angle, but the jaws are still square on the bolt. Of course, you can do things on one, offset, being able to reach up into areas. It is not advised to use these with ratchets because you'll ratchet around and get things all jammed up. One of the real distinct advantages of these types of sockets is being able to put them onto an extension and then being able to get into just some extremely awkward places. Lots of times when you're working on various fittings and that type of stuff, you would use, flare nut crow's feet, and sometimes you don't quite have the reach or the space to do that, so it gives you an open end, and then you can just reach down into all sorts of places, just anywhere basically in an engine blade, and get into places that you can't get your hands or arms. But of course, using one of these sockets is obviously very tedious because you are having to manage it onto a bolt, turn the bolt some, get it off, put it on the next flat, and then rotate again. You can use ratchets a little bit easier when you have extensions. And this very steep detents, these sockets actually hold on to just about everything really well. So I will mention those nice deep detents. It's nice to see that for once. Or detent undercuts, I should say. So with the coupon for 40 bucks, I think these are okay, especially since you can just walk in and get them swapped out on like Craftsman these days, especially of older Craftsman stuff. Wish it was, of course, a 12-piece set. Lots of, obviously, brake lines. You wouldn't really want to use these on brake lines. You would want to use flare nuts because those fittings crush easily. Still would have been nice to have the 8 and the 9mm. Really, I'm kind of disappointed about that. So I'll have to order some ones offline, or online, I should say. Anyway, that was my review of this little Icon set, and it's surprising these kind of socket sets are actually pretty rare. They don't sell them at like O'Reilly's or AutoZone. Napa does have some. Rarely do they ever stock any of the Carlisle ones, but they do stock the Napa Evercraft. They're terrible compared to this. So, once again, for 40 bucks, it's a lot cheaper than the 100 bucks off a tool truck for the same set, and hopefully they'll hold up. I'll let everybody know and in the future when I get some wear on them. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and commenting and who has subscribed to the Catus Maximus channel. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.